but on the record, is there anyone who doesn't feel comfortable with this event being recorded? Please act now. It's like your last chance to act. Hey, everyone's cool with it, I think. Perfect, gorgeous. And now, let me clear the stage for our wonderful speakers tonight. Let's dive into the beautiful world of e-learning with Olga and Sandra and give them our warmest welcome.
Thank you, Alisa.
Okay, so hi everyone, thank you for joining. We are Olga and Sandra, and today we are going to talk about online learning. And in this short introduction, we would like to explain why we want to talk about it and why we can talk about it. So I am Olga, software engineer by passion and profession, who is deeply involved in online learning, having co-founded an educational studio where a team of 40 people provides online courses for different companies, entities, and even government. And I'm also a co-founder of an edtech startup that is building an e-learning platform to support creative online education within corporate environment.
And hi everyone, I am Sandra. I'm a teacher of German as a foreign language. And I was always very interested in new and exciting ways to teach and to learn. So when I discovered online courses, I just fell in love with it and I wanted to try and create one by myself. So long story short, for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been creating German courses for the platform Udemy. And I do basically everything by myself. I have a small studio at home where I record everything, write the scripts, do the post-production, editing, illustrating, animating, and stuff like that. So it's really never boring. And I'm really excited to share everything I learned with you. So it would also be very nice to find out a little bit more about you, except from where you come from. So it would be great if you could write into the chat, maybe tell us your name and tell us if you want to share what company you work for or which line of work is it and your role in the company.
While you're writing this, I would like to share with you that I know 2 groups of people. So the first group thinks that creating online courses is an extremely hard work of a whole army of people of different skills that is impossible to do by your own. The other group thinks that it's just shooting a selfie video with your phone and uploading it to YouTube. What's difficult is that. While you're writing, can you drop a message? Which kind of person are you? Do you think it's super difficult or it's super easy? Actually, we are here to destroy both myths, and we are the live proof of this. So I am a co-founder of an online education studio where an army of 40 people is involved in course creation, and Sandra does the same work by her own. We will show you how complex, engaging, and fun is the process of creating an online course. And at the same time, we'll prove to you that if you follow several best practices and methodology, it is totally possible to create a course by yourself, which will have a pretty decent quality.
So we will quickly just go through our agenda for today. Just wanted to say hi to everyone who's writing. I see you're working in all different types of jobs and companies. So our agenda for today, we will first quickly discuss why e-learning for organizations at all, why it's important. Then we will take a look at different learning types and formats, see some examples. And after that, we will guide you through the different steps of creating an online course. So what you have to do before, during, and after you actually created a course. And of course, you will also be able to try it out by yourself. You will see, we will have a little exercise. And in the end, we will have our Q&A section where we will try to answer to all of your questions you might gather during this whole presentation.
Also, while you are writing, can you share with us, are you here to create an online course? And if yes, is it for your company? And yeah, before we talk about e-learning for organizations, let's first recall any learning that happens within an organization. We can divide it into an internal and external learning. Internal is all about our team, employees, in general, all the knowledge that comes into an organization, no matter if it comes from the inside or the outside world. External is something that we as a company produce to the outside world. It can be related with educating our customers, partners, resellers, future customers, or promoting ourselves and positioning us as experts in some area. This is actually exactly what we do right now. We are an e-learning startup, and with this webinar, we want to position ourselves as experts in this field. But let's focus on the internal learning within organizations. Internal learning helps our team to grow, our company to be compliant with some mandatory regulations, and to achieve the business goals. It all starts with onboarding. To be onboarded means getting the most important knowledge about the company from the day zero. After that, there are different types of learning that happens within the company. Knowledge sharing between employees, knowledge coming from external experts, knowledge that comes from the managers and HRs, some knowledge that comes from the conferences, meetups, webinars like this, for example. If it happens, unfortunately, that an employee leaves the company, they usually have to share their knowledge with the team. It is super important to guarantee knowledge retention. So let's talk about onboarding. It usually consists of several sessions given by HRs, heads of departments, sometimes involves the whole team. It also includes the part where a newcomer has to read a whole bunch of documentation, presentations, PDFs, compliance documents, so on. If we multiply all the hours spent by top management to give those sessions face-to-face or via live meeting by their salary, we can end up with some reasonable numbers that are usually not part of budget, but still affect company's financial state. Even if you spend twice as much to create an online course to onboard an employee that you would spend on actual onboarding, you already win. Onboarding in e-learning format is also more efficient because during face-to-face sessions and onboarding days, so much new information is usually given that it's impossible to remember it. With e-learning, employees can go through the content at their own pace and can always get back to the course and find the necessary information whenever they need. Besides that, it is easier to assess the newcomer's level of acknowledgement of important company policies if you create an onboarding as an online course, because you can enrich your online course with quizzes and even digital certification. Of course, nothing can replace live communication, but you also can enrich your online course with live sessions, making it hybrid or, as we say, blended. It increases engagement while still helping to reduce budget on onboarding. Let's move on to the internal training throughout the employee's life. Imagine that you have a brilliant sales manager who gives sales training to all employees, newcomers, and resellers. What happens if this person leaves the company? You'd have to set up all the process again. Now imagine that you set up an online course on sales processes, which will be available 24/7 and forever. Even if the processes change, it is easier to maintain a small part of the course and announce for the whole company to re-enroll to that course than trying to arrange the meeting to reintroduce the updates. The same happens with the company compliance trainings, diversity and inclusion, leadership, external training, safety at work, and so on. Again, for this case, being those trainings turned into online courses will reduce your budgets for future trainings of the employees. What about knowledge retention? All your team members are superstars and they possess important knowledge that is partially lost once they leave the company. Imagine this knowledge to be scaled to the entire organization. Wouldn't it be great? It is achieved now by internal academies where employees give some presentations or webinars, or some days ago it was face-to-face training, but every Zoom meeting requires time, which means company's money. If the employees could share this knowledge in some persistent way, it would increase the return on investment on this sharing. The same comes to when we train our customers. Some business that produce physical products used to have some offline meetings with every customer or reseller, teaching them how the product works. Well, turns out it is quite an expensive activity. And now the companies seem to realize how much of their budget have been used before on these activities and replace them with some Zoom calls. Again, even though a Zoom call is cheaper than actual relocation and offline meeting, it still requires our time and therefore money. Now imagine that you have a set of online courses to educate your customers on using your product or services. You will set it up once, and as long as your product evolves, you just maintain it. This maintenance will still require less resources than individual onboarding through a Zoom call. To sum it up, efficiently set up e-learning helps companies reduce their budgets on onboarding, training of the employees and customers, marketing, and help to retain the important knowledge.
A lot of you already wrote to us, but if you still have maybe some kind of training you would be interested to transform into e-learning, it would be nice to find out. So let's start with the different types and formats of online learning. I guess that most of you have already had some experience with different types and formats of online learning, especially lately. It's becoming more and more popular. There are really many different ways to transfer knowledge online, and there will probably be many more in the near future. And I'm really excited to see what we will come up with. But let's just try to cover some of the possible formats of online learning and course formats you could have. So let's start with the first most obvious one. It's synchronous or asynchronous learning. So synchronous learning is exactly what you're doing right now. It's learning in real time. It can be a webinar, like right now, or a video conference, or maybe even inside a chat or an online bootcamp. It takes place at the specific time, and all the learners that want to take place need to jump in when it starts, just like you did today. Besides that, another feature of this is that this is interactive. That's why we always try to ask you questions. We will have the Q&A in the end, so it's not just, hopefully it will not just be us talking. We will hear a little bit from you and hear some questions that we can answer. And asynchronous learning would be something that's pre-prepared, so maybe like a recorded video or some lessons, assignments on a platform. And the advantages of this is that the learner can decide when they feel like learning, when they have time. It's self-paced, so that's like a big bonus for them in that case. And we also have hybrid or blended learning, which is a mix of these two. So maybe you watch a video and then you jump into a conference and discuss it, or you can mix and match as much as you want. And then when talking about learning formats, there are really very different styles. One of the most used ones, especially lately, is a video course. So here we have a few examples. So the first picture is my silly face in one of my German courses. So you can see I recorded, I have some subtitles or maybe questions, assignments, illustrations or something. Below it, you can see a screenshot from Skillshare. It's a very popular video learning platform. And on the right, we can see a very nice example of a video course from the platform Workademy, which looks amazing. Then, for example, what is also becoming increasingly popular is something in the form of a webinar. I don't think we need to discuss that you're doing it right now, so I guess you are more than familiar with it. It can also come in a much simpler form. For example, here on the right, you can see a text-based course, which, although it's quite simple, it actually looks great and you can learn through that. We can also have very interactive learning experiences. For example, there have been a lot of nice examples from different language learning platforms. For example, here on the left, you can see Duolingo. I guess some of you maybe use it sometimes to learn a language. So it's very interactive. It has a huge amount of gamification. We can see this progress bar. We have pictures, levels, or similar. And on the right, we can see an example of a chatbot being used for learning. This is also from the Workademy platform. So you have a chatbot, you can communicate with it, go back and forth, and it's very useful for learning. And then, of course, lately we had many new and innovative ways of learning, which are still being developed. For example, VR or AR. It can be very useful to learn some specific skills, like, for example, driving a crane, or maybe about the human body and stuff you can't do otherwise. So basically, it's up to you to choose the format that's best for your course. Is it text, video, audio, maybe some games or whatever. But the important thing is that the content corresponds to the learning goals, so that it's not random and that it contains exactly what you want your learners to achieve, and not more or not less. And of course, it's also necessary to present this whole information in a clear way, so no big chunks of text or something like that. And we also always want to be visually appealing so that the learners can find it fun and interesting and stay motivated.
Now that we know a little bit more about the benefits and types of online learning, we are finally ready to take a look at the process. We divided it into the before, during, and after creating the course. But of course, a lot of these things actually happen simultaneously and are super interconnected. So sometimes it's hard to say what happens strictly before, during, or after, but to have some structure, here are the things that you should do before you jump into actually creating the meat of the course.
Okay, so before we create a course, we of course first need to come up, need to come up with our course topic to see what it will all be about. So sometimes you will already start with a course topic in mind. You have an idea and you want to create a course on that, but sometimes you will have to take your time to find your perfect topic that will work. So how do we do that? So your course should do one of two things. So it should either solve a particular problem or it should speak to a desire that a specific type of person or business may have. So we call this the painkiller or the vitamin. So the painkiller solves a problem and the vitamin improves an aspect of the learner's life. And your course can be any of these two. Do you maybe already have an idea for a course topic or something you would like to create? If yes, please share it in the comment box. We would be really excited to find out what you have in mind if you already have something. And if not, I hope you will have by the end of this webinar. So before we have this polished course topic, we will try to do a few things. So first, we will try to find out who is our target audience. So we need to find out who the course is for. So those of you who know a little bit about marketing, you will be familiar with the term user persona. So this is a fictional person we come up with, we create it in our minds. And it's like a type of a person that might use your site or brand or product, or in our case, the course. So you imagine this typical person that could use this. Who is it? Like, what do they like to do? What is their motivation for taking the course? For example, do they maybe want to improve some aspect of their life, or maybe they are taking the course because they are really intrinsically motivated, they really want to, or maybe they have to keep their job or to get a promotion or whatever. So we can also think about how much money they have to take the course. Are they paying for it by themselves, or maybe their company is paying? So we will try to imagine all of that. And you can have more than one of these personas, but don't try to spread out too much. You might think that it's good to just like pick as many people as you can to make this course for, but usually if you go too broad and cover like the largest possible audience, by creating a course for everyone, you are probably creating a course for no one. So it's much better to define exactly who your course will be for. So when the right person sees it, they will know that it's for them and they will just like have to take it. So for example, if you want to create a course about creating an online course from scratch, you will try to find your target audience. For example, here we wrote, this is for you if you are a business owner, a founder, a CEO or team lead, if you are HR or learning and development professional, or if you're looking to create an online course and you have no prior experience in e-learning. So these are the people you are creating this for, and you have them in mind during the process of creation. We could also go into more detail, and you probably will want to. So for example, for this case, we wrote, this is for business owners who are having a hard time transforming their team into a digital organization. They have an in-house HR and a learning and development team, but they have so far only done in-person training and are looking for ways to guide their team how to do it online. Their organizations are between 50 and 100 people, and they have a budget around 3,000 euros for this and are looking to create their courses in-house. Or a different example, this is for the person who is looking to create an online course. They have an idea or an area of expertise and want to create high quality courses they can sell. They have no experience in e-learning at all, except from taking a few online courses, and they want to do everything by themselves and don't have a big budget. So I hope you fit in some of these personas we created for this. And now when you have those people in mind, you can start creating the perfect product that will actually speak to them.
But before starting to create a product for your nice target audience, maybe someone has already created that. And how do we find it out? We have to do a little research. And how do we do that? We can Google, right? So type in your course idea and try to see how many things with the same topic are already out there. How many students do they have? How much does it cost? How long is it? How it's in depth? Would you have a lot of competition or none at all if you're looking into selling the course? Or is there maybe already something out there that you could use if you want to create something for your business or organization? this step will also give you a lot of ideas how other people did the same thing and how you could maybe pick up those ideas or to improve some of theirs. Another thing to do is to simply ask your audience for feedback and suggestions and use this data to validate your idea. Ideally, both steps should be present in your research. Also, this is the step where you probably do simultaneously while deciding on the topic and target audience. Like we mentioned, a lot of the things will be interconnected. So you will maybe have an idea, and then during the research phase, you will realize that maybe there are already a lot of such online courses on that topic, which are great, and you have nothing new, so you can just reuse those courses. Or maybe the course idea you had in mind turns out to take a lot more time to explain that you initially envisioned. Or maybe you find out that there are none of these courses on this topic out there at all. So maybe it's not an interesting topic, or maybe people are not interested. So maybe you will waste your time creating that. In any case, you will get a lot of insights into your target audience and maybe realize that you have to change some things about your persona or add some specifications that you haven't thought before. And you will definitely gather a lot of ideas and maybe even come up to a totally new one.
So when you are done with all the research, I hope that by that point you will have an insight into everything surrounding your course, and you can jump back to defining the course topic. And at this point, it should be much clearer what your course should and can be about. And I know that sometimes this can seem like really a lot of work, and maybe you're very excited and want to jump into creating the course right away, but it's really worth it to take some time and do it, because it will pay off later a lot, because it will help you to avoid creating a course that is of no specific use to no one. So to sum it up quickly, what we talked about here: how to choose a good topic for your course. So first, you want to identify your target audience. You want to find your personas. You don't want to go too wide trying to cover everything. You also want to ask yourself, are you building your course for your team or your customers or your partners? And what do they have to learn? What is the best format to support that? And how much time maybe do they have for that? Or maybe if you try to sell your course, you will want to pick the topic very well, because more niche courses usually have better commercial success. And you will really want to know the market and your competition. If you're lucky and you did the research right, in the end, your course topic will be something that's your passion, something that you're knowledgeable about, and something that your audience needs. So that's the sweet spot. Hopefully by now you have some idea about your course topic and about your target audience. If you want to, you can start maybe writing down a few ideas about that if you already have some. And remember just that you can always go back and polish the details that you did by now before finalizing it. But just doing this step will offer you a clear structure and direction you can start going in. And the other thing we will also have to ask ourselves before jumping into creating everything is, who is on the other side? Who are all the people involved in creating the course? So for example, if you are a one-man band like me, you will do, it's very easy, you do everything by yourself. You take the role of the subject expert, the main actor, the editor. But for example, Olga has a different experience.
If you're creating a course for your organization, probably you will have a lot more people working on this together. So just an example of roles that might be involved in course creation. You need a subject matter expert, an instructional designer, e-learning developer, graphic designer, motion designer, animation designer. If it's a video course, of course, you will need some cameraman or woman, project manager for sure, editors for editing the scripts or the text or quizzes, video editors, the person who will be involved in production, post-production, cutting sound, all these things, and quality assurance manager and tester. And this is not all the roles that might be involved in the course creation. So you should really think, what is your budget? Right? If you are going to hire a studio, the more specific requirements you hand to them, the more specific costs you might expect in return. Because in fact, a good studio can produce a course on any subject given any budget. They will give you a range. For example, okay, the text course on this topic consisting of 2 modules, 2 units, whatever will cost you 5K, while a good production video course with animation and motion design might cost around 50K. It's a huge range, right? And you want to be more specific. Therefore, the more details you provide about your course length, format, the more specific results you might expect in return. But don't worry if you still haven't figured out all requirements for your course, because usually course creators will have an extensive questionnaire in hand, which you can fill out, and it will help you calculating the needed budget. Actually, we also have such a questionnaire, and we will provide you with an example of it that you can just copy and fill out. It will help yourself to understand the requirements. And if you are going to hire a studio, you just can hand them over this questionnaire. We will share a link in the chat window. You will use it. Of course, it's also important to calculate in the budget. It's also important to understand which platform or software you are going to use. It can be the whole topic for the whole webinar or even a series of webinars. But what I can tell, it's given my own experience and experience of a lot of course creators, that sometimes we are tempted to think that open source self-hosted solutions are cheaper because they're open source and self-hosted. But in the long run, they turned out to be more expensive because you have to host them and pay hosting. You have to maintain them, so you need to have some IT people on board. It turns out that cloud-based solutions where you just pay subscription and you don't have to worry about all this technical stuff at all, in long term, they are cheaper. And now we have another question for you. We've been talking about budgets. Does your company usually allocate budgets for training programs? It's a very interesting, insightful question for us and for you. Okay.
I see that Tanya asked an interesting question. Can one person create a great online course? And I just wanted to quickly answer to that, because the answer is definitely yes. I've been doing it for the last few years. So hopefully one person can create a great online course. And I hope we will give you an idea how to do that a little bit later on. So we will discuss some of the details about how to do that, or at least give you some guidelines that you can research on. Okay, so we're ready to start designing the course, and we'll see. And when I say designing, yes, it's not just nice pictures or visuals or colors you will use. Designing the course includes everything like the structure, the lesson planning, what exercises you will include, some additional materials, your objectives and goals. So everything that goes into the course structure. Basically, we have 2 systems that will help us to stay on track. The first is the EDDI system, and the second one is backwards planning using learning objectives. And this is a huge topic. We will really try not to go into too many details here, but just give you enough infos that you can maybe use it for creating your course. So the first system is the EDDI system. To me, that always sounds like a cartoon hero or something, like the little Eddie, but it's actually a very useful framework, and it's often used to develop courses. So it's an acronym of the 5 phases of course development. So the first one is analysis, the second one is design, development, implementation, and evaluation. So analysis, we already, like if you paid attention, maybe you noticed that we already did that. So we did the analyzing part. We analyzed our learners, how we will develop it, who will take part, and all the little details. And then after that, we can start designing the course. So this is where you take all the things you learned from the previous part, from analyzing it, and you are actually creating a blueprint for the course. You create the outline and structure and write out the script. Then we have development. This is like when you begin creating the course, this is the actual creation and production of the content and the learning materials. After that comes, of course, the implementation, the part where you share the course with the learners finally and put it into the real world. And in the end, we also have the evaluation, where you want to get feedback on all the aspects of the course. And it's really important so that you can improve and revise the content. And you want to ask yourself, like, did we meet the goals that we set out in the analysis phase? Or maybe if there are some possible changes in media types or approaches or whatever. So I must mention here that EDDI model, it's quite a linear model. And most of the current course creation models are actually spin-offs of this model that make it more agile, because it's getting getting more and more important, like in this fast world, to start evaluating during the design process and during the development process, because we don't want to get to the final version and then realize that something could have been done better. So we will all the time try to evaluate during the process before finishing it.
Yeah, let it be agile. So now I'm going to the design phase. It's very important to design the outline of the course properly because it will be a backbone of your course. How do you design your course outline? Turns out that there are some methodologies that might help us to do it, and backward planning process is one of them. What does it mean to plan from backward? It means that you start from goals in mind. This technique helps us to plan pretty much everything, but it's super useful in learning. And this is how backwards planning works. First, you define the learning objectives of the course. And next, for each of the objectives, you identify how you will assess that the learners reached those objectives. After you have identified all the assessments, only then, and finally, for each of the assessments, you identify the pieces of content that will help the learners to answer those questions or to complete those quizzes or whatever your assessments are. So now the question is, how do I define the learning objectives? Is it enough to say, hey, by the end of this course, the learners will know something? It's not. The learning objectives have to be really concise and, very importantly, measurable. How do you define concise and measurable learning objectives? You should tell something like the learners should be able to, followed by specific action verb that explains the desired outcome. So let's, for example, try to define a few learning objectives following this model. After this webinar, the learners will be able to identify different formats of the online courses. After this webinar, the learners will be able to apply the backward planning methodology. After this webinar, the learners will be able to plan their course outline, and so on. If we refer back to what we've learned before, we can see that we have actionable verbs according to Bloom's taxonomy. Now I'm going to Bloom's taxonomy because this is something which can help you to pick up those actionable verbs to use in your course planning. Because you don't have to come up to those verbs by yourself. Turns out that someone already thought of us and developed a list of these actionable verbs that might help you to identify these objectives. This is a huge list of them. We will share the slides with you and you will be able to see them, to print them, to use them in your course planning. And this is the so-called Bloom's taxonomy here. It defines several learning levels, starting from knowledge to evaluation, and for each of them specify a huge list of actionable verbs that make your life as the life of an instructional designer much simpler when you plan your course. So just to conclude, learning objectives must be concise, precise, tell us exactly what is expected of the learner and also of the instructor, and measurable. We need to be able to exactly evaluate if the learner objectives is achieved or not. Speaking of measuring, don't forget about the step of identifying an assessment for each and every of the learning objectives of your course. After this, you are ready for the course structure.
Yes, I hope this wasn't too much, but you will see it's not so difficult. You will try it out yourself and you will see that it's actually very simple and useful, hopefully. After we did all of this planning, all of this analyzing, it's time to create the course structure. So this will be the backbone of the course. So Olga just explained how important it is to have good defined learning objectives, because there will be like our guiding star here. So the goal is to have everything in your course aligned with these learning objectives. So, or better to say, to have only things that support your learning objectives. So while you're creating the course structure or any individual lessons, you should always ask yourself, will this help the learner to achieve this and that, what I wanted? Or maybe is this piece of content necessary to achieve the learning objectives? And if not, just throw it out. It's sometimes painful. Sometimes you spend a lot of time on creating something, but then you just realize that it's not useful. It doesn't support your learning objectives. So it just has to go out. So the goal should be to guide the learners to the outcome by the shortest and clearest way possible. So the shortest and clearest you can do it, the better, of course. Most courses consist of bigger blocks and smaller blocks. The bigger blocks will be the modules or units or however you want to call them. And each of them will consist of smaller chunks, which are the individual lessons. So like we already mentioned a few times, to create the course structure, we will usually use backwards planning. So we will start with the outcome, what we want to achieve, what we want the learners to learn or do at the end. And then we will use our learning objectives and goals and plan backwards from there. So what do you have to include in the course to help your learners to achieve this? So I personally often do it by writing down all the different things that come into my mind, like a brainstorming session, like everything I want to talk about, everything I think is important, or everything I think explains the topic. And then I try to take a look at it and group together the things that are somehow connected to get the units or modules, and then to put everything into a logical timeline. And you will see that you will probably have to go back and forth a few times and polish some things, like moving things in the timeline or between individual modules. And that's perfectly fine. And you should do that because you will notice that some things maybe don't fit, are not useful, and so on. And when you're done, what you are left with is your main course outline at the end of all of that. So when I have this main course outline, I usually try to take a good look at it again and ask myself, could something be done simpler or quicker? Or maybe could a lesson or even an entire unit be just one handout to make it simpler? Or do I maybe rush over something that's actually quite complicated for the learners? Or do I need to take more steps with something? Or did I include a repetition now and again, especially at the end of a lesson or at the end of a unit, or before we want to build upon that knowledge and learn something new with that? Or did I include some quick wins for the learners every now and then? Like, this are the little checkpoints that help them see how much they learned so far and help them keep motivated. And this can often be like a short quiz at the end of a lesson, or maybe a project or assignment at the end of the unit. And it's also highly recommended to give the course structure for review to someone, either from the target audience or a colleague or a friend or someone who's close to it, to the subject, because sometimes it's super difficult to notice not logical or too complicated or too simple stuff yourself. So you will basically want to wash, rinse, repeat, and go through it a few times until you end up with a polished course structure that makes sense, that guides the learners through the learning experience, and that achieves your goals and the learning objectives. And even then, there is still a huge chance that you will want to change something here and there after you begin with the script writing.
The script writing.
Yes.
But before I move to script writing, there is a question. How much does it cost to outsource the content creation of an online course? What should be the criteria for choosing a content creation studio? The answer to this is pretty much very similar to the answer when you want to outsource pretty much anything. So it depends on what you want to achieve, right? Sometimes to build something in your room, it's enough to hire one constructor worker. And sometimes you want to build a beautiful house, so you have to hire an agency that creates the architectural concept and all these things. So it really depends on what you want to achieve and for whom you're building this course. So everything that we've been talking before course has to be analyzed here, and then you can decide if it can be a one person like Sandra, for example, or it has to be a studio. And when you choose a studio, you might have a look at the similar courses they've created for the similar topic, or if they have none, maybe try to come up with a small piece of course that they can produce for you for not so high price, so you can evaluate how it looks like and get feedback from your potential target audience. But still, it's very individual question. Tanya, can you give any example on how much it might cost? As I mentioned before, the course on the same subject can be, depending on the format, can start on a very low price and can go on a very high price. Therefore, it's very important to develop requirements of your course. If you want it to be a video and if you want this video to contain animations, again, it comes back to for whom you are developing this course. So it has to be analyzed. And let's come to script writing. This is where the actual meat of content of your course gets envisioned. Some people write down everything they will be delivering word by word. it's important to do when you deliver a video course or an audio course. Some of people like to freestyle more, especially when it comes to webinars, and it will depend on your individual style and topic that you're teaching and for whom you're teaching it. You see, every time we come back to our target audience. It also depends on the goal of your course and those who create this course. If you work in a bigger team, you will probably also have editors that will go through the text and you will have ping pongs with them, right? They will be demanding that you change something. You might also want to use some good storyboard template. What is a storyboard template? It's something a little bit more complex than a usual document. It's something where you define the timing, you can identify the piece of text that you produce with some visuals, some comments for developers. Of course, sometimes simple Google Doc is enough for you to collaborate on the content. But if you really need to introduce visuals or some videos or something like that, you might think about storyboard template. How to write a very good course copy. If you work on a video course, try to write the text like you talk directly to your personas and imagine them, give them some names and talk to them directly. It's very important that you adapt your tone to them and the vocabulary that you're using. And how do you explain things and keep it consistent through the whole course for the people who you actually want to take this course. It's also a very, very good idea to read it out loud. You will be surprised how different something can look on paper and compared to when you hear how it sounds. I have an example. Once we were creating a course based on a book, and it was meant to be like dialogue course. So people would have dialogues in a video. So we would produce those dialogues. And some people who were helping to produce these dialogues to write the script, they would think that sometimes it's enough just to copy paste the paragraphs of the book and to give them like replicas of the people. And then we started reading out loud and it was like this, hey, how do I do this? And then as you read in the previous paragraph, you do it like this. Imagine how it would sound in a video. It would be super ridiculous. So it's very important to read your scripts out loud. As mentioned before, when starting to write out your script in detail, you will maybe notice that some parts of general course structure might change. It could be done better and you don't need to be shy to change it. You might remove the whole parts or add some parts or even come up to a whole new course idea. So it's okay. You are now digging into the smallest details and this is the perfect time to validate or change your course structure or even the whole course. Here is an example of a script, very simple storyboard that we developed for this webinar. Although it's mostly freestyle, but we had to write the text and to compare the timings, how we do that, and to iterate over it to see that we don't overcomplicate or make something sound simpler than it is. Now, the moment that you've been craving for, it's a moment where we have a break. But you will not be resting. No, you will be working. We will hand out to you some handout where you will be creating your very basic course structure. So this is an example of our field handout, and you will receive it as well in the same folder where you will have your handout to fill by yourself. So you will put your course topic, description, describe personas, and you will use backward planning methodology to produce the outline. So you will start with learning objectives. We will leave a slide with the Bloom's taxonomy verbs that you can use them defining your learning objectives of your course. Then you will produce the assessment questions of these objectives, and you will write down which pieces of content you think that might be useful to answer those questions. And in the end, you will have a big page where you can write the basic outline of your course. Okay, so now we will just be here for a couple, 5-10 minutes. What do we have for this?
10-minute break. You can also use it to get coffee, water. maybe a beer, I don't know, it's already late, whatever, and do the exercise. We will be here, maybe just get up if we need something ourselves, but I would really recommend that you do this exercise right now, at least a little bit, to get an outline, because we are still here and can answer if you stumble upon some questions while doing it. So it's actually a great opportunity to maybe answer some things, because probably when you start doing it, you will definitely come up with some questions.
You can download the PDF. It's a fillable PDF, and you can write down and keep this PDF for yourself.
Question: what should I look for in an online course platform? Features. I don't want to deal with tech things.
When you choose your platform to host your course, you must start with the course goals and what you try to achieve with that. Are you trying to monitor your students? Then you should look into the features that help you to analyze and to see the student statistics. Are you trying just to deliver some videos? Then probably focus on the platforms that are great to host the video courses. It all really depends. We've been focusing on this too much during this webinar. So you start from analyzing your target audience and the course topic. After that, it's easier to define the course format. And when you know which format it should be like, then it will help you to choose the platform. You just, okay, it must be video, it must have some text, it must have single and multiple choice questions. Okay, you know the features that you are looking for. And then you just compare the platforms that have those features. We know that it's quite hard nowadays because there are a lot of platforms where you can deliver online courses, but the more specific requirements for your course are, the easier is for you to choose the platforms, because even though they LMS or LXP, they do a very similar things, but some of them focus on something different. And there is another question about advice on or things that need to be taken into consideration when transforming training material that is meant to be delivered in person into a fully remote online version. Yeah, as we've been talking, there is nothing that can ever replace face-to-face human communication, but you can and try to make it as close as possible. So for example, even if it's online course on onboarding, trying to enrich it with some blended experience where you have face-to-face live video conferences is always good, and try to make it as engaging as possible. This is also, again, a very high-level advice, but we can dig deeper in another webinar. Because it's also a huge topic, right? How do you transform a whole stuff that is meant to be done face-to-face? How do you transform it?
How much time they should allocate for answering the questions that you provided and all this stuff approximately?
I would say however much is needed until you feel that it's done, and when you feel it's done, you will probably fix some things later. It's really hard to say, but you will know when you get something and you feel that it's like a piece, a unit, like that it makes sense. So sometimes you can do it in an hour, I don't know, and sometimes it will take maybe a few months until you like polish it to the point that you will really start working on it. But I just want to mention that I think it's really important to take your time, because I know how I was when I was starting. I just wanted to jump right in, start doing the things, like start recording, start doing the quizzes, assignments, whatever. But you get tangled up in it too much if you start like this, if you jump just head first. So this preparation is like with everything, like preparation is half of the job. And if you do this part right, you will see, you will just like slide through the rest of it, because it will guide you the whole time. You will always have something to look back to. And if you're not sure if you're going in the right direction, you can always check like, oh, these are my learning objectives. This is what I want to achieve. This is the person I'm doing this for. And does it make sense or not?
Yeah, we gave 10 minutes for this exercise. Of course, you cannot create the whole course outline with this exercise, but it gives you an idea of how to do it. So even if you were able to come up to one learning objective, it's already good. And if you can have an idea, how can you evaluate that this objective has been achieved? Even better. And if you know for this specific question what type of content you should provide to help people to answer this question, then it's awesome. You're on the very right path, and you can go home after you're at home. Sorry. And
Figuratively go home.
yeah, you can just disconnect and start creating your course and get your ideas flowing. Okay, we have a good question here. How do we analyze and identify which level of build the project demands? We should think about whom we are building the project for and the complexity of the subject. And of course, on the same subject, we can build very short course or a very long. We usually recommend to start from a short course, so-called MVP, minimum viable product, that you can test within your target audience. And then if it's needed to be longer, then you will proceed to a longer course creation.
With that, we will jump into creating the course, the exciting part. And this is actually the part that most people have in mind when they think, what is creating the course? So this is exactly this part. And it's also, I think, the part that people fear most and the part that people get stuck at most because they have this idea and then they start doing it and working on it. And it's just like too much and overwhelming. So you can have a lot of different fears. For example, how will I do it? Is it too complicated? Will it get too expensive? How can I make it look professional? Or if you're creating a course for your company, you might also ask yourself, like, how will I find and organize all the people who should work on create a course? If it's a big team, or will the course be good enough to justify the time and the cost it took to create it? Or maybe you can have even questions like, I never used a camera before, or I'm very camera shy, or I don't have any equipment. Do I have to buy everything? So there are a lot of different things that you should think about and that can scare you at this point. But actually, whatever your concerns might be, the good news is that you can go as simple or as complex as possible. That's why it's so difficult to answer all these questions, because it can be done very simple and it can be done very complex, the same thing. So it depends on how comfortable you feel, and we will check out a few ways to do it.
Actually, creating an online course might take you from several days to several months or even years. This is why it is so important to start from an MVP, as I already said, so minimum viable product. Aim to build rather a very, very short course of a high quality than a long course of so-so quality. Being it short makes it easier to test and evaluate the learner's feedback. So you should start from maybe one lesson, one very short video, one text lecture, something that helps learners to achieve one and only one learning objective. Test it with a focus group and then continue. For example, imagine that you are hiring a studio to do the production, then you will not have to deal with these things. But if you're planning on doing it yourself, here are just few tips on production process. We can show you the whole process because it's huge. It requires another series of webinars. But for example, in our in-person meetup that we organized a couple of months ago, we did set up a studio at home and filmed a short part of a course, after also developing the whole concept and studying our target audience altogether. This is an example of a very simple and not too expensive setup that you can easily build by yourself at your home or organization.
Exactly. So it doesn't have to be too complex. It doesn't have to be even too expensive. You would be surprised how amazing things and results you can get with actually very cheap equipment. So I will try to quickly present you with the process of shooting and creating everything from pre-production, production, and post-production. And this is my favorite part, but I will try to keep it short and just give you some basic infos. It's impossible to cover everything. Every of these aspects would need a very long course just by themselves, but we will just try to share with you some of the most important stuff you can maybe research later if you want. So first, we of course start with pre-production, and what this is setting things up. So you want to set up your light, which is very important. You want to set up your scene, your whole location, so everything that you have it ready for the moment of shooting. And like I said, your equipment doesn't have to be expensive. You can actually make a really amazing course just with your phone, and it will look awesome, really. But you just need to take care of a few details. The first thing is light. Light is very important, and a good light is one of the most important things to create a course that actually looks high quality. So just to give you a few little tips about light and some equipment, for example, here is a very, very simple light you can use. So this is called a ring light. I will not turn it to you, but it's something that you can buy for like 20 or 30 euros online, and it can make an awesome light for you for filming. Or if you want to go a little bit more complex, but still not too expensive, you have many different lights. So how you want to set it up? For the most basic setup, you just want to have one light shining at your face. Of course, it makes sense. We'll try to set it up that it's at least 45 degrees from your face and a little bit higher up. That way you will get the nicest lighting. You don't want to put it too close because as you can see, you will get too much shine and too harsh shadows. So just put it a little bit more away from you. And you will want to have a second light that will light a little bit on your head, because that way you will be a little bit more divided from the background and a little bit on the background. So I will try to demonstrate it with this light. This is something that costs like 10 euros online. I'm just using the cheap stuff so you can see that it really doesn't have to be super expensive. So we will have the main light and we will have one that shines like this. So I have other lights as well, but if you can see just the difference, you know, it's like it looks much better already, and I'm just holding it in my hands. So just to show you the power of good light, and super not expensive at all. Here is a great question: how to handle reflections from the screen in the glasses. It's always a big problem when filming. The best thing you can do is to find an angle that you are going in with a light that it's not reflecting directly into the camera from the glasses. So basically, yes, or bare lenses. Basically, when setting up the light, even I'm sometimes still not completely sure what I want to achieve. So you just like try different things and try it out and move it around it until you get something that feels good. It's like moving around yourself and also putting it closer and further away, because it will very affect the way of the light. The second thing, which is maybe even the most important thing, is catching good audio. So nowadays people are actually quite used to seeing very bad videos, and we are very forgiving, but the audio is, some say, even like 70% of our experience of a video. So please, if you're going to record it yourself, always use a separate device to record the video and audio, because if you have a device recording a video and it's 3, 4, 5 meters away from you, you will get really bad audio with a lot of reverb. So you can use something like this. This is a standard boom mic. And as you can see, I'm a big fan of this company. It's Rode mics. So if you're looking for something nice, you can check it out. This is a more expensive version and you need to plug it in an audio recording device, but it's very professional. Or again, you can go very, very simple. You can get one of these small mics. I don't know if you can see it. It's like the one you put on your clothes. You can plug it in your phone. If you have this plug, for example, I have an old phone I use just for this, and then plug it in and record it. So you want to have the mic as close to your mouth as possible. We don't want any reverb. If you hear, like, reverb is like the echo you get in some rooms. If the room is very big, you will hear it. So use some blankets, put them on the floor, put them on the walls. If you have big windows, put some blankets over the windows. I always say, like, it doesn't matter how it looks backstage or whatever. It's just important what you can see. So maybe you're just like covered in blankets. If you want to record just audio, the best sound you will get with very cheap equipment is just cover yourself with the blanket and record it, because it will sound like it's a nice studio or something. And the third thing you will want to look out for is, of course, your scene and location. You need to pick where you will be filming. One thing to keep in mind is that all your equipment, if you have a lot, fits into the room. You want to declutter your background, so don't have a lot of things behind yourselves. Probably if you're starting out, the simpler, the better. In the meetup that we did, for example, you can see that we used just like a piece of fabric behind us. You will see it later in the picture. So then we come finally to the shooting part. So first is behaving in front of the camera. Some people have it naturally, and I'm so envious. It never came naturally to me. So what you do is you practice. You do it, you record yourself, then you watch it and see what could be improved. You watch speakers that have a good behavior in front of the camera. You try to pick up some stuff. So it's just like, it really is a skill that can be practiced. Also, always imagine that you are talking to your learners, that they're in front of you. I think you will have a much nicer tone of voice and speaking. What you can do, and what is really handy, is a teleprompter. It's a device that shows the text in front of the camera and you can read from it, or maybe you can just have some guidelines showing on it. And it's also very good because it helps you to keep a steady rhythm. And of course, when in front of the camera, we always try to look good. So I can't give you a lot of makeup advice, but one thing that always helps, and I will just show you, it's like this shine absorbing tissues. So you can't go wrong with this. You just like take this one little tissue and you can dab it on your face to remove the shine. And without any other makeup, it will make you look so much better. It's magic. So here you can see the little setup we had when we did the meetup. So it's very simple. There isn't a lot of equipment. The background is just a piece of fabric. So you can buy it at any fabric store. It doesn't have to be any special because the special types are very expensive. We had some simple lights, and upper left picture, you can see Olga and you can see the teleprompter between Olga and the camera. This is the thing that you can use exactly to read your script or just have your guidelines so that you can stay on track. One other advice I would give to you is to try to smile a little bit. I'm always surprised how much of the enthusiasm the camera washes away, because you can come really excited about something and talk to the camera about it and it will come out like you're not interested at all. So you have to maybe a little bit overdo it. Just try to keep a smile on your face and maybe use your hands a little bit. So whatever helps you to show it in a more positive and more exciting way, it will also help your learners very much to stay focused on you and what you're saying. And then we come to post-production. This is, at least for me, the most time-consuming part, because just when you think you're done, you did all the planning, you did all the shooting and everything, and you're like, yeah, it's finished. It's not finished at all. So first of all, you need to edit your videos. So you will either find someone to do it for you, or if you want to do it yourself, to just edit a simple video is actually not so super complicated. And there are actually a lot of free programs and software you can use. You don't have to pay a lot for it and play around with it a little bit. This is also the part where you will want to make your animations, illustrations, whatever you want to like stitch into the video. Maybe put it together with a presentation or something. You will want to create also your promo video and all these other stuffs you want to use. So, like with everything, yes, the preparation really is the biggest part of the job here. So if you take a little bit of your time to prepare the scene, to pick a good light, to position it well, I usually take a whole day just to set up the studio and everything before I start shooting, like review it a few times, take a look at it, maybe sleep, and then take a look at it again tomorrow just to maybe get a better idea. But it will really, really pay off, because reshooting is probably the worst thing that can happen to you, right, Olga?
Yeah, that's true. The filming, if everything is set up right, the filming is usually the shortest part of the whole process. But if you make some little tiny mistake on setting things up, then you have to reshoot, and this is super painful. So usually big studios, for example, they have test shooting and they check and recheck. But even then, sometimes some wonderful things happen that can become expensive in the post-production. I have an example. Once we've been shooting an office of a company, and a speaker was always talking and had a lot of like gestures. I think that he listened to Sandra's advice to use his hands and a lot of emotions, and then gone through production, post-production, testing everything. And no one ever noticed that behind the speaker, there was a tiny poster with, for some reason, Confederate flag on it. And it was only noticed when the whole course was published, and the central office of this company looked at it and said, what the hell, guys, you have to remove this flag, just remove it. So imagine the post-production guy, there is this poster and the head is always moving and you have to somehow remove it. It's not like a green screen and you're stable, right? It was super, super long process and expensive. So yeah, make sure that everything is super greatly set up and there are no any tiny small mistake that can become expensive for you in the future.
Yes, like when people say we'll fix it and post, it's the worst thing.
Yeah.
Like, no, fix it before you even start shooting or whatever. Yeah, but I think this is a rule for everything. Filming or even planning the structure of your course, you want to like prepare as much as you can before jumping into like creating the whole thing. Yes, and when creating the course, it's also important to keep in mind the whole time all the additional materials and all the supplemental stuff you want to use. So and who will create them, how they will be created. So the additional materials, they're actually very important, and they help your course to be more useful. They can help the learners to repeat what they learned. They can help them to practice. They can have something to refer to later, or it can even be used to check their previous knowledge, what they know about the topic. And it can also enable you to expand the volume of the information of your course, because you can include some information to the ones that are interested in a little bit more detailed stuff. It can come in many different forms. It can be simple text-based, like a PDF or a handout, or maybe a whole textbook. It can be something you can download, maybe the video recording of the whole course, or maybe a transcript if it was, for example, a webinar. It can be in the form of quizzes or assignments, or maybe even project. If you have an art course or a skill course, then maybe you can have a project later where you try it out. You can go fancy and maybe even create a game or an app, or it can maybe be some subtitles you need to create for the courses if you want to have subtitles, or maybe some different links to a website or a tool that can be useful. So all these things are important, and you need to think about it, who will create it, how and when you want to include it in your course. So for example, in this course, we provided you with this fillable PDF. We will have this questionnaire that will help you to figure out your course requirements. We also created, for example, the whole presentation. You also got a link to our website where you can get more information. And so all of these additional materials we had to create, and we had to plan them out. And in more complex courses, the amount of them will be huge. So really plan ahead. So if you finished all of these steps we showed you so far, and if you didn't give up so far, it's time to finally publish the course. And of course, to celebrate a little bit. That's very important, because at this point you already made an amazing job, and you're left with your finished course. But of course, the job is not done yet. There is still some things you have to do after the course is published.
Yeah, that's true. Your job is done, but far from finished. There are a lot of things that you have to yet do, and you will do continuously, because the course is like a living organism. Even if we say, okay, you shoot it once and you have it forever, but you still want to constantly improve it, right? And how can you improve it? With evaluation and constant feedback. So how do you evaluate if your online course is successful? I think you will be surprised knowing that this is the most complex question in the history of online learning. In business, you usually define some measurable metrics, right? What can be measurable metric for online learning? I think that the most obvious things that come on top of my mind is to measure dropout and passing rate, meaning that how many enrolled students dropped out of the course and how many of them completed the course. Unfortunately, even these metrics don't reflect the overall quality of your course or even the achievement of learning objectives. Why? Imagine that my course consists of one short video of 2 seconds that everyone will watch because it's just 2 seconds, right? So dropout rate will be 0 and passing rate will be 100%. Does it mean that my course is great? No. Now imagine that dropout rate is really high and successful rate is really low. Does it mean that the course is bad? Also doesn't. It might mean that you haven't defined your target audience well. I will give you an example. Once at Adera, we launched a super amazing course on physics, like a great course. We targeted it to the whole country, and the dropout rate was close to 90%. But from those 10% who passed, the feedback was outstanding. Like everyone was loving it. We studied the people we tried to analyze it, and we figured out that the people who passed the course actually were physicists, which means that our target audience had to be the people who already had in touch with this amazing discipline and who had some pretty good fundamental of it. Therefore, you must really work on that first part before the course is launched and figure out your audience pretty well. Once you have that in place, there are more metrics that can help you to measure the success or something of your course. For example, the time you spent, the learner spent on each activity. You want to know how much time they need on each question and where they feel difficulties. Maybe the question doesn't make sense, or maybe it's too difficult for the course overall level of needed knowledge. Time to complete the overall course. Is it too long to complete? Is it too difficult? Is it too easy? Is it too time consuming? You want to know all of this. Activity completion rate. Which activities aren't being completed and why? What happens there? Continuously paying attention to these metrics will help you to improve your course for your specific target audience. And of course, keep in mind that whatever metrics you choose, the evaluation should be of a course quality itself, and of the long-term change in the knowledge and behavior of the learners. In a business environment, it is common to provide the employees with some trainings on compliance. And since they are mostly mandatory, the metrics we spoke before don't help that much to evaluate the course quality, right? Because they have to do it and they have no choice to not to do it. So for these cases, it is common to create some pre and post assessments of the learner's knowledge, and the assessments after some time that the user complete the course. So you can be sure that there is the long-term knowledge of the compliance regulations, the data protection, whatever things, and make sure that these assessments reflect the learning objectives and are impossible to complete without achieving those. Okay, so we spoke about evaluation, and of course you cannot evaluate the course success if no one is taking it. So somehow you should promote it. How to do it? It's also a huge topic for a huge series of webinars, but very on a high level. If your course is a B2C, once again, if you have carefully studied your target audience, then you should be able to launch, I don't know, some targeted ads that will help to promote the course. If the course is meant for your customers, then you will include it as a part of your communication strategy with your customers. If it's designed for the employees, then it's up to you to choose the right strategy to communicate those courses that are aligned with your company values and business goals. If the courses are mandatory because of the regulatory laws, it's one thing. But if they are related to some general topics that can help company to increase productivity, for example, courses on time management, then it's up to you to keep the learners engaged. And how do we do that? It's the learners' engagement when it comes to online learning. It's also a very interesting topic. Sometimes it can be achieved with introducing some gamification elements into the course. Sandra already spoke about gamification, about Duolingo. It has a lot of gamification, right? And even the course for the employees might have some of them. For example, some badges, some avatars, progress bars. Of course, you can't imagine in the corporate environment the course where some unicorns are jumping, I don't know, some monkeys saying, hey, good enough. But still, even adult people like to achieve some results and to be proud of them, and sometimes even to get digital certificates and to be able to share them with their colleagues or with their I don't know, with anyone on social media. So if it's a case for your company, then you can invest some resources into designing a very nice looking certificate that people want to share with people. And okay, and so again, we coming back to the monitoring and analyzing the success of the course. How can you figure out that all these techniques, gamification and certification that you include, that they are effective? So besides monitoring the course metrics we spoke before, you must collect feedback on your course from your audience. Again, monitoring some metrics that come from your learning management systems or from some else resource is one thing, and collecting the feedback from live people who are taking the course is another thing, and they are auto-complementary and not mutually exclusive. For this, Make sure that we include meaningful questionnaires at the end of the course where learners can provide their honest feedback. By the way, since this webinar is also an e-learning, we will send you a questionnaire afterwards because we want to gather your honest feedback and we want to improve this thing and make it better and better with time. For the future, which is very close, right? And speaking of it, if you want to stay in touch with us, please connect to our Slack community. Okay, yeah, there is a link in the chat. There we will be connected with you and discuss some important topics on e-learning, and you can ask us questions, and we can even have a collective brainstorming because 2 heads are good, but 10 are even 5 times better. And there is another thing that will happen in the future. We will launch a bootcamp, a very intense bootcamp, more intense than this webinar, 4 weeks of like a lot of topics that we covered on a high level here will be disclosed in a more deep detail. And there you will be able to actually create a full online academy guided by us and our amazing e-learning experts and instructional designers. And if it's something that you would be interested in, please just drop a tiny plus in the chat. We would love to know if we are working on something that people can actually be interested in. Yeah, and there is a link also where you can enroll to this bootcamp. And for you, because you spent 2 hours with us, we have an offer to give. We offer 500 euros of discount on this bootcamp if you subscribe as a listener of this bootcamp. And there is, yeah, the promo code is also there attached to the link. And yeah, it's a lot of amazing things will happen in the future, and we are looking forward to meet you in our Slack community and on our bootcamp. And yeah, it's almost coming to an end, our
Yes.
webinar, and we have to recap, otherwise we will be here forever. Right?
Exactly, and it's already getting late. So let's quickly just take a look at all the things we mentioned here. So first of all, I hope that we convinced you that you can and that you should create an online course. It's really something that literally anyone who wants to can do. But it will require more time and resources that some people might think, but it's also not impossible as some others might think. You should always carefully research your target audience before actually starting to create a course, and it will save you a lot of time, money, and it can help you to create a course of higher quality. The budget of a course may have a drastic variation depending on its format, size, and location. That's why it's always so hard to say like how much will it cost, because it's really a lot of tiny details that have to go into it. You should use backwards planning to create a course with a great structure that will achieve yours and your learners' goals, and that you always should evaluate a course success. And it's not just about the passing or the dropout rate, and that the post-course feedback is as important as the pre-course research on a target audience. So this is just very short, the things we mentioned here and the things we discussed. So now we are finally here, although we already addressed some of your questions, but now it's finally time to answer more of them. Okay, this is a really practical one, down-to-earth question. Would you have a good brand or source for the anti-reflection vibes? Actually, no, I had a few of them and they all do the same job. This is like the one I have is the Essence one. And like there are 50 pieces in here, and if you film a lot of courses, they will last you a long time, even then. So I think whatever you can get, it's called like either oil control paper or anti-shine tissues or something like that. But I think when you see the title of it, you will immediately know what it is.
While you are looking what else, I would like to come back to the question we had in the beginning, where people were asking the tips and some advice when you try to transform some face-to-face experience into an online course. We said that it's a huge topic, of course, and it depends, but I think it's so important topic that maybe we have to give it a little bit more attention. So the very first advice, and one of the most important one, if it's onboarding, then it's important to keep the welcoming tone for the whole course. Of course, tell stories and give examples that are related to your company, to your values. Then there are some more technical advices. So you have to start with some fundamental, right? And how to choose where to start from. You have a look what parts of your onboarding change often and what parts stay more or less the same each quarter or year, and start from those that stay the same each quarter or year, because this will serve you as a fundamental. And then you see what to do with the rest of the parts. Also, I said that it's good if you enrich your course with blended live video conferences, but it also depends. If you have to onboard hundreds of people, it will be difficult to scale this live sessions. So maybe you would like to somehow organize them in bunches or even replace them as well. Then you can start analyzing all the materials or topics you already have. And maybe you already have some digital materials that are easier to transform into online course. If you need some external knowledge, you can hire as subject matter experts from the outside world. And in the end, you have to come up with the more or less same structure as you have in your face-to-face onboarding. And of course, it's a huge topic. It's a huge structure. So you should be very careful in planning this and prioritizing. So choose the topics that the most people need most of the time. For example, compliance. This should come first. Safety, corporate culture. E-learning for this topic should come first. And then while you have it covered, you focus on the rest. So I hope that these small advices answered that very important question.
We had a question here. If you tailor-made your course for public, when should you make your own platform, or should you stay with popular platforms like Udemy, etc.? So I would say making your own platform is a huge job. So I don't know in what case you would go that far. And if you should stay with the popular platform, it also depends on what type of course you're creating. So if you're creating a course you want to sell, maybe it's not a bad idea to go with Udemy or Skillshare. And if you maybe want to create some training for your company, I would probably go with Workademy, because it's a great place to host it there. So it also like depends on, you need to ask yourself who is your target audience and where would they go to get that course, and what is the best way to give it to them. And I also just quickly answer to Konstantin's questions, how to keep eyes on the camera and read text in the same time. Yes, it's sometimes difficult, but if you use a teleprompter, it actually comes between your camera and yourself. So it's right in front of the lens. Yes, we can maybe see it. So it's right in front of your lens. You're actually looking into the lens through the glass and into the camera, so it's not noticeable. If you don't have a teleprompter, it's probably a good idea to just remember the text. So just slice it up into smaller chunks that you can remember, and then just like deliver it from your head. It's also not a bad option, and it looks often much more natural.
Yeah, teleprompters are great, but yeah, you have to really get used to them.
Yeah.
I also wanted to add up to this tailor-made course. You can also, for example, if you don't want to become lost at Udemy, or it should become a part of your brand, you can go with the platforms that provide branding for you, like Workademy, for example. Workademy can provide you your own portal branded with your brand that will be part of your kind of like website, let's say. So if it's the case, then just come to us. Okay, I would like to answer Pink's question. I lost it again. But, how much to ask you to create a 45 minutes online learning, a mix of text, quiz, video provided. So if it depends if the video is provided, so there is no video creation, production, post-production work. It really depends on the level of design and customization. And again, it can go like from, I don't know, from 2K to 10K, depending on a level of technical requirements as well. Imagine that you want to that you have some very specific user journey that will require developers to add something to the technical platform. So it also depends. If you already have a platform, if you have everything that you need, and you just need to populate it with text that the online course creator create, then it shouldn't be more than, let's say, 3K. I would say it's it's a very rough, and we have to analyze the requirements pretty well. It just depending on the level of design and customization, and of course there are a lot more variables to take into account. Yeah, Sandra?
Yes, it would probably be best that you maybe contact us, and then you can write us your specific situation, and then we can maybe give you some better idea about how it would go.
It also depends. Imagine, do you have already a subject matter expert? So it means that the only work that is required is from editors and proofreaders and copywriters, or you just have a topic and you have a rough idea what kind of text you need. So and we have to find a subject matter experts. So it also depends, because we have to pay a subject matter expert as well. And if again, sorry, Sandra, if it has to be illustrated, so there are some images to create, it's also adding up. So again, the range can be from 2 to 10 to 20K, but it all depends on the requirements, and we can help you to analyze those if you want.
Yes, that's probably the best. I just wanted to quickly react to Miriam's message. It's actually not a question, but she wrote, "Thank you so much for this insightful seminar. I'm right now fueled with energy to start my first online learning project." And it's so amazing to read that. I'm really excited. If you want to, you can share with us, maybe if you have come up with an idea, or maybe if you figured out something during the exercise. It can be Miriam, but also all the others as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
I see that Andre asked about, we didn't talk about the importance or not of subtitling. That's actually an interesting question. For example, I always put subtitles in my courses because I'm teaching a foreign language. And then if you know that your audience is not native English speakers, maybe it's not a bad idea to put it just to make it easier for them. Or if I speak something in German, I always put subtitles in German and then the translation of the thing I said. So it's also very specific. If you know your audience, and if you know that they would love to have the subtitles to follow easier, definitely do it. What platform do you use to automatically do this? I don't use a platform to automatically do this. I usually do this manually. I'm not sure if there is an easy way to do it. I know if you drop your video into YouTube, it will create subtitles. So maybe you can use that.
There are these guys, Subly, they do that.
Perfect.
But they only provide the subtitles on the same language that you speak. So they will not translate it. I will leave them here. Okay, so I think it's time to celebrate now.
Yes.
There's an additional question that you can find from Kamal. To build a team of designers to support a learning project, what skills are vital when hiring the right resource?
Of course, the relevant experience in designing e-learning materials is important, but I would not say that it's the most important thing, because a good designer, good illustrator, provided the technical specifications of what you're building, is able to create illustrations and design for that. So I think it's a normal evaluation of a person as a designer. In this case, I would really check the experiences in instructional design and the type of courses the person have worked on, because sometimes instructional designers use different frameworks and different even platforms or tools. And when you have analyzed what types of requirements are for your course, then probably you will come up to write down the kind of specifications that you want from your instructional designer. So imagine that you already have some platform in-house, let's say Moodle. Probably you would like your instructional designer having experience already with that. Or if you will have, there are a lot of times that there is a technical team who will be working with the platform, and there is a team of instructional designers who create an overall structure of the course. Then you should analyze their experience, and as we said, you can give them a task to create a small part of a course structure, so you can evaluate whether or not it's what you need. So start from a tiny MVP for them as an exercise, so you can analyze what they can deliver for you.
Can I jump in and add something?
Yes.
It will be about designers who are graphic designers or illustrators. Just because we brought up this topic, it's also, if you're looking for like a graphic designer or motion designer or illustrator to work with you on creating an online course and creating visual elements into your video, for example, it will also be a really good thing to find someone who has worked with educational videos before. Because creating some graphic design and creating graphic design that will be later used in videos, and then there's a difference between entertainment videos and educational videos. Because like if you're in educational video and there's a speaker in the video, like for example me, I'm sitting here, there should be some graphics appearing next to me, or maybe blocking the full slide, or maybe it will be something then, I don't know, I show a graph is moving and then there will be a graph moving right next to me. It's super helpful if the person has had experience with creating educational videos before, because also the visuals have to be helping the expert, subject matter expert, deliver information. So for example, like here in the slides, for example, we were, internal, external. Okay, this is like helping you understand. I mean, internal, external is pretty self-explanatory, but still the visual is helping. Or here, synchronous, asynchronous. Like the visuals are helping you understand the kind of concept we're trying to deliver, whereas it can be just something like an art, and then it will not be helping your student understand the materials that you're trying to deliver, and they will be distracting your student's brain from actually understanding the material. So that, in terms of designers who are not instructional designers, but graphic designers, is also important. Okay, I'm done.
Great point, Diana. Great point. Yes. Yes. I think like with everything, you want to think about this stuff and ask yourself, is it useful? is it in accordance with my learning objectives? Is it here just to make it like more fun, or is it here to really support what you want to teach? And it should most of the time be here to support your teaching and learning objectives.
Yeah, but also you mentioned fun, and I would again add some small comment that fun is also helpful.
Yes.
For example, if it's a course on something very complex, if you add some jokes or memes or funny pictures to kind of like break the tension of the material being so difficult, that would be helpful. For example, we were working on a course on, or cats, yes, exactly, Constantine. We were working on a course on economic journalism to educate journalists about the basics of economy. And so in the videos, we added some memes that were relevant for the target audience. And then in the comments to the course, they were writing that they were laughing at them, and it was really helpful because like you're looking at a graph or like an Excel sheet of finances of some company to analyze, to write a material about it. But then like a subject matter expert in the video makes a joke and a cat appears, and then it breaks the tension and it's much easier for you to get the material.
Okay, I think we're done with all the questions, right? And if you have any other questions you would like to ask, you can always ask them in the Slack community. We will love to answer them.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us. And yeah, and let's go and celebrate this fantastic evening.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you all for the nice comments.